From MTN, the Montana Television Network, this is Face the State.
Hello and welcome to this week's Face the State. I'm Tim McGonigal. Well, tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and coming up on today's program, we'll be taking a closer look at the impact of the legendary civil rights leader. We have a great couple of guests who will share their thoughts. And first, though, MTN's Jennifer Hausman has more on MLK Day here in Montana.
We all know the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., a staple in the civil rights movement of the 60s, a powerful speaker, and the youngest man to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. He impacted every person he came into contact with until the evening of April 4th, 1968, when he was assassinated. That same year, there were calls to commemorate Martin Luther King Jr. with a federal holiday. But racial and political pushback blocked the passage of such a holiday until 15 years later, when legislation passed in 1983, making the third Monday in January a federal holiday. The first observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day was in 1986. Celebrating the holiday in 2020 has grown significantly since 1986, especially in Montana.
29 years ago, passed Dr. King Day as a holiday. We were the second to the last state behind Arizona to pass the holiday. And it actually was really the first piece of public policy that the Montana Human Rights Network worked on.
Even last week, Governor Bullock volunteered his time to read to students as part of the Read for Peace event put together by Montana AmeriCorps.
It's good to hear, as the kids are saying, what does service mean? What does helping someone mean? And certainly those are things that teachers are helping them understand each and every day. But it's great for them to really think about it in the context of MLK.
32 schools across 10 Montana communities participated this year. The book Bullock read told a brief overview of the civil rights movement, starting with Rosa Parks and Dr. King's work. The governor was excited to hear the reactions of the students. MTN also spoke with Rachel Carroll Rivas with the Montana Human Rights Network out of Helena about why it's so important to continue to celebrate.
He listened to his father.
I think that the King celebrations are often a mix of arts and culture, but they also include, really new activists and new voices for civil rights. In Great Falls, Helena's Mayor Wilmot Collins will be sharing about his work today as a Black person in Montana and his work to promote civil rights. Change doesn't happen on its own, and it's going to take each of us, engaging. We can't wait till tomorrow.
Changes since the first celebration of MLK Day over 30 years ago have been limitless. But one thing that hasn't changed, Dr. King's message of kindness. Tim, back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Jen. Well, today we are pleased to be joined by Stephanie Schneider, the Providence Formation Director, Program Director at the University of Providence in Great Falls. And also with us, we have Pastor Marcus Collins, who's with the Alexander Temple Church of God in Christ in Great Falls. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to start out with a question for both of you. Pastor Collins, when you hear the name Martin Luther King Jr., what comes to your mind?
Liberty. He was a man that embodied the dream that all human beings could possess, live out, and excel in liberty.
All right. Stephanie, how about you?
For me, the first thing I think about when I think about Martin Luther King Jr. is his focus on human dignity, his celebration of diversity, but also his pursuit of unity within that diversity and elevating all of the things that make us human, but celebrating it instead of making it a challenge.
Yes.
All right. Well, I know there's a variety of events taking place across Montana, and throughout the program, we're going to be putting up some information on screen about just some of the observances taking place in the Treasure State. There's pretty extensive celebration at the University of Providence too, Stephanie. Can you tell us what's happening there?
Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. So we've been celebrating this since, I believe, 1998, and this has been something that's been central to something that the University of Providence wants to elevate. Again, this understanding of human dignity and celebrating that. We have a celebration that's taking place tomorrow at 10 a.m. It will start with a bell ringing outside the newly constructed University Center. And then we'll move inside and we'll have music. We'll also have art featured from one of our students that just graduated in December. And then we'll also have a keynote speaker sharing his thoughts about the parallels between Martin Luther King Jr.'s thinking on human dignity and love, and how that compares to Catholic social teaching, which is a really interesting combination or examination. Yeah.
And Stephanie, I wanted to get your thoughts. Working at a Catholic university, how do you think Dr. King's ideas and philosophies relate or compare to a faith-based organization?
Sure, yep. As a Catholic university, we want to embrace everyone who comes to our campus, all of the backgrounds that they come from, and we want to honor what's central. We know that they are endowed with goodness, with God's love, and we want to create a space where they can be honored in that way, and also a way for us to share with the community and create a space for the community to celebrate those ideals.
All right. Marcus, talk about your congregation maybe and how you relay the message and the ideals of Dr. King's teaching to your congregation.
I think if there was one word that could kind of encapsulate, I would say service. Because Dr. Martin Luther King, his whole life was based upon service that was rooted in love. So if we can find ways to serve the community, serve whether it's rich or poor, black or white, educated, uneducated, straight, lesbian, homosexual, some way we can serve people that we can all feel, as Stephanie was saying, she used a great word, dignity. That no matter where we're at in life and who we are, what our preferences are, each human being deserves to experience dignity from one another. And if we can do that by service, then I think we are on our way to not completing the work of Dr. King, but at least carrying it on.
Absolutely.
Are there any special events that your church is planning for Martin Luther King Jr. Day?
Where we're working in collaboration with Pastor Philip Caldwell at Mount Olive Church, and there's going to be a great service that Monday night with Mayor Wilmot Collins of Helena. He's coming to speak and share his phenomenal story. And preceding that at 1 p.m., there's a luncheon at the Holiday Inn. So it's just a great time of unifying with people and reaching out in love.
All right. So again, a lot of things happening in the Great Falls area, and
Yes,
as I said, throughout the state, there's going to be a lot of things going on as well. Speaking of the state, do you think Montana is doing enough to promote civil rights and the things that Dr. King advocated? And if not, where do you think the state or cities can improve? Stephanie, I'll start with you.
I think that Montana has always had an appreciation of the independence of each individual. I think there's progress that can always be made in that area, but I believe that we're moving in a direction where there is an appreciation of that diversity, and trying to support people as they pursue whatever it is that they are interested in or whatever they're committed to.
All right. Marcus, what about you?
I think first of all, we'd have to be encouraged in the fact that we have made some strides as far as it relates to diversity. And I think we have to also be humble enough to accept that there's still some areas where we can improve in. I look at social equality and civil rights, it comes in like ebbs and flows. There's some times where we have great movements like diversity movements, #MeToo movements, Black Lives Matter, just various movements that come that different groups of people are letting their voice be heard. And so if we can just go with those flows of when those different voices speak out and just hear the hearts of each individual group, I think we make great strides. And so as far as Montana, I think we are making progress, but there's still progress to be made.
Always improvement
Yes, sir.
to be done. All right. Well, we are in an era of what seems to be maybe unprecedented political divisiveness. Do you think Dr. King's message today is more important than ever? We'll start with you, Marcus.
I think it is more important than ever, but to some degree, if you hear me out, it can be more unattainable than ever. Because Dr. King, what he mastered with showing us is the ability of the power of the human voice to impact the human heart. To some degree with technology, it appears that we've lost that voice by which we can share hearts with each other. Instead, we all many times find ourselves shouting where we're right instead of shouting where we can agree and hearing each other's hearts. If we can get back to that, just really hearing each other's hearts, I think then we move toward that dream that Dr. King had.
Right.
Yeah.
Stephanie, what about you? Do you think that this message is resonating more today
Yeah,
than
I
ever?
believe it's incredibly relevant, and it has been for a long time. But I think, similar to what Pastor Marcus is saying, it's easy for us to look at other people as the others,
Yes.
and to separate ourselves from them, and to recognize only the differences that exist between us and the other person. And I think when we start viewing people in that way, we're creating division that doesn't have to exist, and it also limits our ability to find common ground.
Yes.
And that, I think, is it's the foundation of what Martin Luther King was speaking about, was trying to get back to the heart, get back to the things that matter, and recognize that we share a common human experience,
Yes.
the highs and lows that go with that. And our views might differ, but there is something common that we share collectively, and that's worth celebrating. And so I think it is very relevant, and I think it is something that we can aspire to. It might be a little discouraging sometimes when we experience that tension, but it's certainly something that is worth pursuing and
Yes.
relevant today.
Yes.
Okay. Well, aside from attending Martin Luther King Day Jr. events, which are very impactful, how would you encourage people to take the day maybe a step further to promote his message? Stephanie, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think what Pastor was speaking about in terms of service is a great place to start. And we on our campus are actually kind of trying to kick off a service impact week with different opportunities for our students to be more aware of their ability to serve the Great Falls community and where the needs might exist. So my suggestion to people, obviously attend the celebrations that exist, be inspired by that,
Yes.
but be willing to take it a step further. And if there are ways that you can serve your community, even your neighborhood, I think that will carry on the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. It might be in a very small way, but it is relevant, and I think that would make him proud to know that his message has influenced that type of action.
Yeah.
I know that at the University of Providence, I mean, a lot of the people that we see who are visible in the community are the athletes, because we see them in the
Sure.
highlights and stuff
Sure.
like that. But it's good to see them out in the community doing some of those service
right.
projects. And what are some of the maybe some of the reactions you get from those kids, or
Sure.
the athletes, I should say?
Sure, yep. So we have students that volunteer regularly at Whittier Elementary, and we also have students who volunteer regularly with Eagle Mount. And also the athletic teams do pursue service opportunities. And the feedback that I get from students is sometimes surprise. Also, you go into those experiences expecting to have gratitude or all of these things, and sometimes you're blessed with that and sometimes you're not. And so part of the experience is helping those students to navigate that. But every time, especially if they're doing it on a regular basis, they walk away with more than what they expected to on the outset. But it is, it's challenging. It's allowing yourself to be in an awkward situation on occasion, and recognizing that there's benefit on the other side of that. So, but most of the students have greatly benefited from it and have grown personally because of that initiative.
Sometimes when people step outside the comfort zone, they'll be surprised at how much of a difference they can make.
Yep, that's right.
But Pastor Collins, what about you? What are some things, I mean, like we said, the events of the day, Martin Luther King Day, are important, but how do you take that message or live that message beyond just January 20th?
I would put it this way: find somebody and help somebody. You may not make it to an event, but that's okay. There's going to be a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday. We go past people each and every day that may need a kind word, may need some kind of help or something like that. And if we can be attentive to the needs of our community and helping other people, then we're living the dream. We're living the dream.
Great. Well, we saw in Jen's story earlier, Governor Bullock reading to the kids about Dr. King, and
Yes.
how important do you think it is to spread that message of service and civil rights to the young people, especially the elementary school kids? Talk about that.
I think it's very important and it's vital to their growth as citizens in the United States, because when we celebrate Dr. King and we celebrate the civil rights movement, first of all, it brings them to a consciousness at a young age that the life that they're experiencing was not always like this. And there was some hard knocks and there was some struggles, and American history is filled with those who have sacrificed for the betterment of our country. And so when we talk about civil rights movement, we look at it from the standpoint that now all people can realize, whether you're Native, whether you're Caucasian, Black, that all of us have a place in American history. And we may have entered into the fabric of history at different times, but each of us have a patch in history that is very important. And if we don't know each other's fabric, we miss something about being an American.
Absolutely.
Great. Pastor Collins, I know you're not just a pastor, you're an artist as well. You wrote a play a few years ago called
Yes, sir.
Love Don't Know No Color. Tell us about that project and how it was received, and just kind of give us the background on that.
The interview answer or the real answer?
The real answer. We got time.
It was inspired from stupid people. What I mean is stupid people is this, and I don't mean to be offensive. Sometimes we can be so regimented, I'll say as a pastor in our religion, or as a Black man in our race, or as whatever our career fields are, that we don't open up to the fact that the world is changing. Things are evolving. If we talk about civil rights is evolving. There was a time when we celebrated civil rights that we were basically looking at it from a perspective of the strides of African Americans. But now we look at it from the strides of African Americans, from social classes to our lesbian brothers and sisters, and reaching out to all people and making everybody feel the value. And because I'm a pastor, I say the value that God has given all of us. That's the common ground, that God has given us all the worth to receive dignity from one another. And so when I was writing this play, I wanted to write something silly. I wanted to write something funny. I wanted to write something that would get people mad. At least if they're mad, you have their attention. And then I wanted to write something that would kind of prick our interest and kind of challenge ourselves to, are we being as open as we can be as human beings and citizens in our state, and from a global standpoint as well. So it was pretty fun to do, to get people mad.
Yeah, that was had the desired effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How was it received by the people?
Well, actually, it was wonderful. We actually ended up with about 900 attendees. It was phenomenal. We had pastors there that were helping out and answering questions. We had the Montana Human Rights Network, they were involved. It was just a lot of entities involved with this. The city commission, just various entities, and people loved it. Actually, we had a few opportunities to kind of run it back. And so we're looking at doing that, and actually looking at some more projects that kind of push the envelope and also expose the diversity that is taking place in Montana as we take proactive steps to make change happen.
Great. Well, several years ago, I know there was an award-winning movie called Selma, which
Yes.
was a very good movie if you haven't seen it. But I know there's other resources out there that you probably are aware of that you could maybe recommend about Dr. King or about civil rights and about service. Stephanie, what do you suggest?
Sure. As I've been preparing for this event, so I've been organizing it since 2016, a lot of what I have done has been going back into simply on YouTube and listening to him speak.
Yes.
There are so many resources available there. I believe it's also the King Center, I'm not sure, they have an archival collection of all of his speeches. So if you want to go through it in a different format, reading that and making notes, I think certainly for me, the most compelling elements have been watching him speak. He was an incredible orator,
Yes.
And his message was so profound. So that to me has been what has been so inspiring,
Yes.
and that has also is something that I would encourage anybody to pursue if they wanted to learn more about where the heart of this came from, and why he was such a central figure in moving that forward.
Yes.
And that's a speech, that speech, and other speeches that he gave too, that you can watch over and over and
Exactly.
get maybe
Exactly.
gain something every time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That you see.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Marcus, what about you? What might be some good resources for people?
Some great resources could be, because we live in a Google society.
Yeah.
Sure.
You could Google the NAACP. You can Google the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, those things. And then by Googling those things, you can then tap into resources by which we can hear his speeches, but we can also see the locations. Ebenezer Baptist Church, the Lorraine Motel, where he was assassinated, and also Mason Temple, Church of God in Christ, which actually was the temple where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his last and final speech. And so I was fortunate, Tim, to actually be able to be present at all of those different locations, and to be in that atmosphere. It kind of takes you back to the reality of what our country was experiencing, with change that was challenging, but it was refreshing.
Right. Stephanie, as I know it takes a lot of planning to do this
Sure.
Martin Luther King Day events at the University of Providence, and I know you can't be all alone in doing this, but
That's
you've
right.
probably got a lot of help.
That's right.
Talk about
Sure.
some of the people that help you and some of the planning that goes
Yep,
into it.
yep. So we have a committee that comes together every year, and we start meeting in the fall, just kind of brainstorming about what the vision is for this celebration, what we hope to accomplish, and then we just continue to work together, and we try and make sure that that committee is a cross-section, across campus that's representative. And where we can, we try and engage students to be a part of that process as well. But yeah, it certainly is not just me. I might be the person who's speaking about it, but it would not be possible without the help. Not only of the committee members, but also all of the departments that play into, whether it's promoting the event, making sure the space is ready for us, all of those details require a significant amount of logistical planning, but everyone is absolutely on board and they want to see it be the best that it can be. So it makes it a pretty exciting experience.
And getting back to students, do they have a role in it as well?
Yes, so every year we try and bring in a student speaker, so someone who can share a speech that is original or share an art piece, which is what will be happening this year that is original. So we want to have the student voice a part of this experience. We believe that that is what makes us unique as an institution in the Great Falls community, is that we have students on campus that bring a unique perspective, and we love having the opportunity to allow the Great Falls community in to see that and to witness that.
Great. Pastor Collins, I wanted to ask you, as you look back on your life and your time, I know you're not from Great Falls, but how has Dr. King, is there a moment in your life that you can think where his teachings or his thoughts really inspired you, or that maybe stands out more than anything else?
I would have to say, throughout my developmental years, even through grade school, we were always taught about Dr. King. Black History Month, which is in February, was like a month celebration in the school system growing up. And I guess life has a way of shaping and forming you, and then sending you on a path that you may not have thought you were going to be on. I always felt I would be in civic service. I always felt like I would be in some types of civil rights work, helping people. What I did not know is that it was God's will that he would take a young man from Chicago and plant him in Great Falls, Montana, and then have the opportunity to serve God's people, I'd call God's people, in various ways. So I would say that it has always shaped my life to serve people, because one thing that I've learned from growing up in Chicago, traveling in the military, and now living in Great Falls for over 25 years is this, that we're not as different as we think. That outside of our exteriors, we all know that pain hurts. We all know that we want our trials to end. And we know that we all want to live with joy and peace and love other people. And so he has shaped my life through the study of him by wanting to serve people better. And if I can leave someone's presence making them feel better about themselves, then I feel like I've done the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Absolutely.
Great. Stephanie, how about you? How has he changed you?
I would, so part of my experience spearheading this event has been my exposure to his work and to his legacy, which has been a personal gift to me and something that I really have identified with personally. But I absolutely second what you're speaking about in terms of meeting people, honoring their dignity in that space and being present to that and recognizing that. I feel like he did an excellent job of elevating our awareness of that and not stopping at opposing opinions, not limiting the conversation to that. Certainly we can disagree on things, but he always spoke of recognizing the dignity of everyone. And I think if we're mindful of that in our personal interactions, that is absolutely carrying on his legacy. And that is something that I try to be mindful of moving forward.
And if I can say, Tim, I think he left us with the gift of a social conscience.
Sure.
That we are more aware. That's why we're here now. We're more aware that we can do better. We have done better to be socially conscious of each other.
Right.
All right. Well, Stephanie, real quickly, tell us again what's happening at the University of Providence on Monday for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Yep. So we will have a bell ringing outside the University Center, and then we'll move into the conference room in that space. We have Abba Father's Voices of Praise Community Gospel Choir. So they will be doing several music pieces for us. And then we also have, in his defense, sisters that are a trio song group, so they'll also be performing. We have one of our alumni, Alyssa Blevins, will be sharing one of her art pieces at the event in a poem. And then we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Guides, one of our theology professors, speaking. So a very jam-packed event, but we're very excited about it.
Yeah, but it's a great event. All right. Well, Stephanie Scheider is the Providence Formation Director at the University of Providence, and Pastor Marcus Collins is with the Alexander Temple Church of God in Christ in Great Falls. Both of you, we thank you so much for taking time with us today, and appreciate all that the insight that you've given us, and good luck with the events coming up on Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. That's all the time we have for this week's Face the State. I'm Tim McGonigal. Have a great day.
You've been watching Face the State, a presentation of MTN, the Montana Television Network.